Hi, this is Adam Eliyahu. I'm here. I am so pleased with Rachel TouiTou. She wears a lot of hats. She's fighting for Israel 24/7. One of the things she does is she's the spokesperson for an organization called Tzav Tzav 9. And I really, really wanted to speak to Rachel because this is an amazing organization, which if it wasn't for Israel, they would be praised for their efforts. But because it's Israel, they've been a bit demonized, and I think very wrongfully so. So I'd like to get the real story out there. So Rachel, if you could tell us quickly what Tzav 9 does, that would help our viewers.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, even though it's on Zoom. Um, well, Tzav 9 started in January 2024 after Ronen Bar, which is still today the Shin Bet head of Israel, even though we don't know what's going on with him these days. He said,
If I could just explain, Shin Bet is short for Shabak. It is the internal security service,
right,
similar to the
right,
FBI.
yeah, part of the security establishment, one of the major organizations dealing with security. So one of the things that he said in closed doors that was later on published in the Israeli media was that back in January, up to Israel's knowledge, 70% of all humanitarian aid that passes the Kerem Shalom border, which is the border that through that border you bring stuff to Gaza, the convoys and all. This is the main central point of passage between the two, Israel and Gaza. Up to 70% of all these convoys that we were sending back then to Gaza fell in no other way to say, but they fell into the hands of Hamas. So with that knowledge, he said it like this, just like in the back of his head. He just said it like this. But this information did not fall on a deaf ear. We, the public, the Israeli population, who's been living through October 7 and all the trauma of October 7 and the war and what it means to have a brother, a father, a husband fighting the fight and the combat in Gaza, knowing that we are sending our brothers and families to fight and to release the hostages, to find a way to put an end to Hamas. And at the same time, we are giving out what our enemy needs to continue to pursue this fight. Because in the end, when we talk about humanitarian aid, people automatically think about, food, medicines. What we think about and what in reality, what really matters is the fact that we're sending also the fuel. And the fuel, as we know, as any person with a common sense knows, the fuel is necessary for the combat, for the efforts of maintaining electricity, not just for the civilians, electricity also for the Hamas tunnels, because the Hamas tunnels are deep underground. They need a system of electricity that brings, the oxygen in and so on. So on the one hand, you're sending troops. And that's also what we do now today, right? We're sending 5 divisions into Gaza. We've been sending them out a week ago. So on the one hand, you're sending the best of the people you have. And you put them in danger because we believe that we should put an end to Hamas, because we believe we want to get our 58 hostages back. And on the second hand, you're giving anything your enemy needs to continue and pursue. I really think that many people don't understand the process of what it means to send humanitarian aid when it talks about Hamas. The process,
If I can
yeah,
interject one thing, when I was growing up, we used to every Halloween the kids would go around and collect candy, and it was also a big thing for us to take UNICEF uh, boxes to collect charity for UNICEF, and UNICEF was for the children. And you'd think, oh, that's so beautiful. It's charity. And you'd think that the United Nations is supposed to be the moral conscience of the world. And then you
right.
find out, for example, Hamas, also, you have to understand, Hamas was the government in
It is
Gaza.
still,
It
yeah,
is, right. So
unfortunately.
they can do whatever they want. So one of the things they did was they made it illegal to use any um, any kind of money except for what is it? They could only use, I think it was Jordanian dinars. Um, but they made it so that all of the UNRWA employees, which is the biggest employer in Gaza, they could only be paid in dollars. So
Mm-hmm.
they were forced to change the money, and Hamas charged 10% of
Right.
that. They took off the top of it.
Right.
So
Right.
that means by that UNRWA was actually 10% of the UNRWA budget in Gaza was going directly into the pockets of Hamas.
Right.
And as you said, electricity. Oh, the Gazans need electricity. Well, it's a little hard to be in a tunnel without electricity. And
Right.
also, Hamas was appropriating all of the humanitarian aid that went in, and even the stuff that they didn't need, the food and stuff like that, they would sell at exorbitant rates to the people.
Exactly. That's my next point. So that's exactly what I wanted to say. Most people believe that, well, countries like Britain, like France, like the US, we're sending money, like you said, to UNICEF or other organizations. And in this case, we're sending, and they send a lot of help and funds to Gaza to relieve the starvation, right, in Gaza. They think that this aid goes to the children that they see online, right? The children that they put in front as as a tool to say, oh, bad Israel. But in the end, the process is like this. Hamas loots the
Uh,
humanitarian convoys,
Lutz,
right?
Lutz.
French, sorry. Um, so the Hamas takes over the humanitarian convoys once they pass through the gate of Kerem Shalom. They then resell the humanitarian aid. When you think of it logically, and before Tzav 9, I didn't, and before the war, I did not really know the reality of things. But I would have expected that humanitarian aid is supposed to be free. It comes from, countries, from foreign aid, and in the end, the Gazan people, the Gazan family, need to pay for that aid. So that's a
Mhm.
question in itself. But let's say, okay, we resell the aid. So Hamas resells the aid. It gets money out of, and in the end, not directly, but indirectly from foreign governments. And this aid goes into the hands of Hamas as cash, as money. And with that money, they recruit new combatants and new people to continue the fight. So we are in like a never-ending cycle of violence, right? And we do it in the name of humanitarian aid, which is completely absurd. One person with a logic mind, a sane mind, would say, okay, Hamas is a terror organization. We need to put an end to Hamas as soon as possible in the best ways possible, in the most efficient way possible, not just for our own soldiers. I admit the world doesn't care at all the number of fallen soldiers that we have. We do in Israel, and we do a lot. And not just for the sake of our hostages that we desperately want back, but for the sake also of the people that they care about, which is the civilian population in Gaza. And it doesn't happen.
It's people also have to understand that Hamas, for a lot of reasons, they have uniforms, they don't wear them most of the time.
Right.
So when the humanitarian aid
Only
comes
when they
in,
parade our own hostages out. Yeah.
ouch, yes, very true. When they parade them, that's the only time I have seen the uniforms. Otherwise, they can be in these tunnels and they'll jump out with an RPG and shoot at the Israeli soldiers. They'll be in crowds of people,
Yeah.
and they'll be like, oh, me, Hamas? No, no, no. Um, that's a big problem. And with the humanitarian aid, they'll be in the crowd saying, hey, I want food for my family. And as soon as the IDF walks away, they pull out their Kalashnikovs. What they do is they hide the guns nearby. Everyone knows where it is in
Right.
Hamas. And they'll grab a gun. Now the humanitarian aid is theirs.
Right.
So, and
It's
also,
another example. It's another example of how, the theory, the books teach you something or tell you something, and the reality is completely different. It's easy to say, oh, we should differentiate. We should differentiate. Sorry, we should. It's easy to say that we should differentiate between, non-involved civilians and militants and combatants and Hamas. it's easy to say. In practice, like you said, they're not wearing uniforms, right? And the same way, if I go and take you now to the now time, to the present, we're talking about having U.S. companies involved in Gaza in about a week, right? This is what we're talking about right now. It's still not, the thing is in motion. Apparently, the people, the U.S. company workers just arrived earlier this week. It will be operated and functioning in a week or so. That's what the government said. But I talked to several members of the Knesset just 2 days ago when they first announced giving back humanitarian aid, and we'll talk about it in length, why it's a bad idea, the way that they do it. But things that they told me is that when you think about it, and they don't want to really say it out loud because they want to and they have to give a chance to those companies. But one of the members of Knesset that I talked to told me, you know, Rachel, in the end, this U.S. company, they will have to give the aid, and the aid will fall to the hands of Hamas in another way. And he gave me an example. He said, okay, let's say we do anything as planned, right? We are registering there's this woman, she has 3 children, she's married, she has a husband who is fighting with Hamas, but she herself, she's a woman and she has children. We need to give her the foods and the medicine that she needs. Okay, she will register and being scanned or whatever by this U.S. company. And this U.S. company will give what they call a family box, which is enough food for a week, for 10 days. I don't know how they will organize it, but it's a family box. And in this family box, she'll go back to her tent, her house, wherever she's staying right now, and she will get in touch with her husband at some point. So he doesn't need to be there and show up and say, hey, this is me, Mohammed, I want to get the food, right? So this aid will fall into the hands of Hamas. It's still a better alternative to have a strategy behind how you distribute the aid than do what we do now, which is saying, okay, we have a plan, we need to do that, but in the same time, we're going to bring aid all over Gaza, from north to south, doesn't really matter, thinking that this will bring us what they call political oxygen, right? Credits from the world, when we know, as if we didn't learn our lesson, that the world wants this war to end. It doesn't matter what we do, it will never be good enough.
No.
So we are in a turmoil.
Also, I remember early on there were complaints, oh, there's no aid. And the trucks were lined up at the crossing and weren't going in. One of the reasons was that the drivers didn't want to go in because they would drive the truck in and they would be either beaten or
So I'll give you a spoiler alert. It was announced 2 days ago that only 10 or 9 or 10 trucks would get in. That was the first announcement that the government, that Bibi Netanyahu said. 24 hours later, and we were this morning in the Kerem Shalom gate, and we had people with us of Tzav 9 in the grounds yesterday. And now we're talking about 93 trucks getting in. Yesterday, it started yesterday. In the afternoon, we received from a Gaza news channel that then later very quickly erased the post that they posted. They said that 11 trucks out of these 93 trucks were already looted by we don't know who, but they said armed people, not recognized armed people. So it's just the beginning, right? And they erased this post immediately, I think for obvious reasons. This is not a way of finding a solution for the humanitarian aid crisis. Israel will not get any benefit out of this, not political breath or oxygen, not a credit from the international community. I can tell you that I read yesterday an op-ed from a diplomat, a European diplomat, saying it doesn't matter what Israel does. It's still not a good solution. This is still not going to work. So the more you try, and it seems like we don't learn our lesson, but the more Israel tries to please the world, the more we are, in this mud that is called Gaza, never ending.
And I've seen so many studies where they're like, oh, there's starvation in Gaza. No,
there's no starvation in Gaza.
All of
do you know what there is
studies
in Gaza? So first of all, there's no starvation in Gaza. Kogats, the people from the IDF in charge of monitoring, and you have to understand, it's not like propaganda from the IDF. We have an interest of not having starvation in Gaza. This is an Israeli interest to not have starvation in Gaza, right? What we're saying is that not only there is no starvation in Gaza, what there is is a big oiled machine of propaganda that Hamas and their, friends and fans do online. It's completely cynical. They dare to go to such length of showing kids with terminal cancers and terminal diseases, and then the European our hearts and the American hearts say, and logically even my heart when I see kids suffering, but these are not kids who suffer because of Israel. They are kids that are in a situation of war, right? In the reality of war. I'm not saying that the life is easy in Gaza. This is not what I'm saying. Absolutely not. But there is a reason why the situation is hard in Gaza. And there's one person to blame, one group to blame, and it's Hamas.
I run across that. I recently got into an online, let's call it a discussion with with someone who posted a picture of a young woman who was clearly, skin and bones,
Yeah.
and he blamed Israel. And you know, I'm a boomer, so I don't know much about the internet, but it wasn't so difficult to find all of her posts where she was asking for aid, for money, because she had a disease.
Right.
And she never, and I'm like, and this was going on for months. And I'm like, so here you go. And he's like, no, but I'm sure she would not be in this condition if it wasn't for Israel. And I'm
No,
like,
so what's really funny and funny, I'm saying this cynically, right? It's not funny at all. What's really funny to notice is that usually when you see the pictures of poor children, skin and bones, next to them you have a healthy parent, very healthy, very, even I'd say they do not miss one meal. So it's they know how to pull the strings of the
and,
emotions,
and,
and what I can say in terms of politics, and it's such a shame in the end that the hasbara right field is completely left orphan. We should be able to have the right politicians or the people saying, look, this is fake. You should understand this is like a hot balloon. If you blow it, there's nothing back in reality. We do not do that. We do not do that efficiently enough, apparently so. And the result is giving out aid without a thought, without strategy, not even according to their own plan of attack.
I wonder sometimes because on one hand, Israel, to be honest, this time Israel seems to be putting a good effort into Hasbara, into explaining our position. Um,
It's never good
and
enough. It's never.
it's never, I wonder, I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We're
Yeah.
Jews. We're Jews. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we've been accused of killing Christian children to bake matzahs in the
Right.
past. And so any chance they can get to accuse us of killing children, they will. I gosh, I remember it wasn't in Gaza. I used to live in Gush Etzion.
Hmm.
And there was someone went online and brought a video of a little Arab boy stuffing rolls, stuffing bread through a little hole in a concrete barrier. And he said, "Oh, you see, you're starving them out." And I looked at it. I said, I know that concrete barrier. That's the concrete barrier at the Arab village right near the roadblock where the IDF stands. And I know that is less than 2 miles away from a supermarket where Arabs and Jews shop together. Why would he be stuffing bread through the hole? But
And
it's
this is the problem of, we live in a generation of immediate information, of,
it's
you don't wait to see you don't think, people don't even think or question what they see. And in an era of AI, this is very troubling and this is very concerning, to know that we're going this path, this way. And Israel, the tough war of explaining, of defending ourselves on the media, on the international arena, not just that we never were good enough, but it will become even impossible to fight that war and to succeed. It's like putting a drop of water in an ocean of lies.
I want to discuss one more thing. Actually, I want to discuss a few more things now that I actually get to talk to you, because this is a hugely important subject.
Yeah.
And people, as you said, people don't go on information. They go on gut reactions, on reactions to propaganda pictures. So there's very little true information out there. I was very surprised when I did a little bit of research into Israel's responsibility towards in international law towards Gaza. And the first basis, there's a wonderful article. I'll put the link in, that was put out by the Institute for National Security Studies. And the first question, all of these claims are based on the Gaza Strip is territory occupied by Israel. And they come right out and they say, no, no, Gaza is not occupied by Israel. In 2005, Israel entirely pulled out.
Entirely, yeah.
We did, they call it a blockade, but it was only a blockade to stop weapons from going in, which apparently we were not doing aggressively enough. They were
Right.
smuggling in plenty of rockets.
And also what they call the siege or whatever started only after Hamas took over Gaza Strip,
True,
after their
true,
election.
true.
So we can definitely say that in the past 20 or so years, like 18, 10, 20 years, Gaza was a prototype of what would be a Palestinian state. Honestly, they could have built what we call the Singapore of the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
The great, Trump dream of Gaza. They could have, with all the money that they received from international community. The subject of Palestinians has always pulled the heartstrings of the world, right? They are given a lot of help, a lot of funds, a lot of
I
money
wouldn't put
and
it like
cash.
that. The subject of the Palestinians, when it is connected to the Jews in Israel, that's when it
Right.
pulls the heartstrings.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Good correction. I accept it. Yeah, of course. Well, anything that has to do with Israel and Jews automatically, pulls people in and interests people. If you talk about what's going on in Yemen or in Africa,
Right.
nobody cares, and suddenly nobody cares about hunger, real hunger this time, right?
Right, yeah.
Um,
The Yemen has been it's the largest humanitarian crisis of the
and
decade.
nobody talks about it. It
Right,
doesn't even
right,
ring a bell to anyone.
right.
Um, but my point is that you can argue whether or not Israel has control or not over Gaza. But Gaza has a government, and the government is Hamas. Even today, unfortunately, we fight in order to have Hamas dismantled, exiled, you name it, disarmed, at least disarmed and gone from the Gaza Strip, to be able to go to the day after. Because all the government in the world, in the Western world, whether it's Macron or Britain or whatever, they all speak about the day after. Nobody knows how to get to the day after. Nobody.
Mhm.
And they leave us to deal with okay, do whatever you need, but let's wrap it up, as if it's that easy.
I,
But you have a government in Gaza. The government, the address is Hamas.
I
Until they
also
are there, they are in charge. And I'll tell you even one more thing regarding humanitarian aid, because that's the subject of our talk. In the end, they manage the humanitarian aid. And once we let them manage, and this is my beef with the government, my beef at Tzav, we should not let them distribute the aid. Because this is
right.
how they chokehold, they have their hold on Gaza. And we have a famous in Hebrew, a famous sentence, that says, "Who controls the Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount, controls Israel." There's this saying in Hebrew, but who controls the humanitarian aid controls Gaza. And
And
right
all,
now, it's Hamas.
and also, I feel kind of like they're throwing something on Israel. UNRWA was established right after Israel became a country, became a state, specifically for this purpose. They were the ones who were supposed to be in charge of it. The fact
So,
that
so UNRWA is an anomaly in itself.
yeah, yeah,
UNRWA.
in so many ways, but they basically became a branch of Hamas. We talked about how
Oh
the
yeah.
payroll was going for it. There were people in
But
UNRWA.
it's not just about the brand becoming a branch of Hamas. UNRWA has always been a branch of a Palestinian wannabe statehood. Because the definition, like the raison d'être of UNRWA, is to, cancel Israel. Because in the end, the problem of Palestinian refugees should have been solved by having those refugees of back in the 1950s join the UNHCR, right? And the fact that they created a whole different UN organization that does not answer to the regular terminology and human rights of the UN, a separate entity just for the Palestinians, tells you also a story about the role of that UN organization.
I'll tell you how I experienced it as a soldier. The last year that Yasser Arafat was alive, I served inside Ramallah in a base called the DCO, which it is half IDF and half Palestinian army
Hmm.
or police force. And there was a chain link fence in the middle separating us. It was a very interesting situation. We did a lot of meditation to stay calm. We had to check in. It was only for VIP cars and UN cars and also press. So I was standing out. I had snipers all around me protecting me, and I would check the cars in. UNRWA cars, they had these ID cards, didn't have a picture on them. I could have made it, my 12-year-old kid could have made it in his school. They're like blue, they're not square and they're laminated, but you could fake them. I mean, faking them, they looked fake, even the real ones. But we were not allowed to check the cars at all.
Right.
So the UN UNRWA people would drive in and out,
Freely out
not
of.
totally freely. There was one time there was a guy, he had a kind of a hatchback, and he's
Mhm.
going in, and I stop him because I'm allowed to stop him and check the ID. And I look in the back and I see a blanket, and under the blanket is something with wires and metal,
Yeah,
and I'm just like,
something humanitarian.
right. And I call my officer over, and my officer was amazing guy. He looked at me and said, "There is nothing you can do, and you can't even stop him or delay him. He's going through." And I'm like, dude, if there are any bomb attacks this week, I don't
Not
know what I'm
responsible.
I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm gonna do on Yom Kippur. And that was, I mean, I mean, they're saying, oh, it's a blockade, it's a blockade. Then how did all this weapons they
Get
had,
in.
yeah, they had a photo of the last time when they were exchanging prisoners, hostages, and
Mhm.
they had brand new rifles. They were Belgian, I think. And it's like, where did they come from? You know?
Right. Yeah,
And
those questions only people with a mind actually question and ask them. That's the problem. The
it's
world, all these, students in the US or wherever, no, no, no brain, no brain.
right. So another question is, if you say that the civilians are starving, which is absolutely not true,
True.
there are so many, any credible even the UN has to say, well, they're not starving, but they're in danger of starving, and they've
So
been in
that's what they
danger.
did last time, by the way. The UN
Right,
wrote a report, alarming report, saying starvation in Gaza. They have these numbers with colors, the higher the color, the worse it is. And we were at the bridge of starvation, and they, brought all the alarms on us. And
so
and later on, and of course it worked, the propaganda, the anti-Israel feeling, and so on. And a couple of months later, in quiet, with no in shushu, like we say in Hebrew, they published a corrected version of their
mhm,
report. They are
exactly,
the master of doing this.
right.
Kogat, like I said earlier, Kogat with numbers and statistics and real information of apropos siege and so on, and what's getting and what doesn't get in. Kogat knows what gets in and what doesn't get in officially, and they know that there is no starvation. They stated once and again, there's no starvation. What we do have is a propaganda machine, is an anti-Israeli, yeah, machinery in social media that does the work and influence the government of the Western countries. Um, what we do have also, and that's something that I guess people in the West don't necessarily see, but I see. I go on social media pages and on Twitter and I see what's happening with my neighbors in Gaza. And what I see is TikTok videos of the latest dessert that this restaurant in Gaza
Right.
opened this morning, a shishlik kebab or shawarma. And I laughed with my colleague. I said, "Oh, this is a kosher meat."
Right.
In the end, there is no starvation. What we do have is a lack of strategy. What we do have is places in Gaza that are not supposed to get humanitarian aid because we don't want them to get in those places. When you have civilians in places that are not supposed to be there, there will be starvation because we're not supposed to give help there. What the IDF plan to do, and I hope that they will go back to do that plan and to apply it, is to define a humanitarian zone like it's supposed to be, southern to the Morag axis, right? And they're
Mhm.
supposed to bring the civilian population out of the north and down to the south, where there we can send humanitarian aid and anything that we need to send to this population. Right now, what we started to do is cave into the pressure once again for several reasons. I don't know all the reasons. International pressure, Trump coming back from his tour in the Middle East, you name it, all those reasons are valid. And we are just unstrategically sending humanitarian aid all over Gaza as if we haven't learned anything.
It's also you touched on something, and this is not exactly on our subject, but when Trump made his suggestion that all the people from Gaza should be allowed to leave, I was like, wait a second.
True.
Being a refugee, fleeing a war zone is a basic human right. And people are saying, no, 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 the people of Gaza can't leave. And now
Have
we
to
know
stay.
that the majority of people in Gaza want to leave.
Right.
And they're being denied that base. I mean, think of it. I'm a father. If I was in a war zone, I mean, I even discussed it with my wife. Should we stay in Israel with the kids? We don't know. I mean, it's a responsibility, my children.
Right.
So,
Right.
but they are not being allowed that basic human right. People
Yeah.
would rather see the people of Gaza die than perhaps make it
And this is
easier for
sad.
Israel to win the war.
You know, when I give interviews to antagonistic journalists, not like you, like BBC, Le Monde, and so on, I can tell you that it's one thing that I tell them all the time. You were in favor of getting the Syrians out of Syria. The Ukrainians,
Right,
you allow them to go, but you don't want the Gazans to have the same rights. So in
right.
the end, I will argue that I care more about the Gazans than you care.
Oh, we
And
totally
when
do.
I tell them this, they are like shocked. And then they report whatever they want to report. But this is the basic truth. You are in a war zone, you want to bring the civilians' rate of death down, right? I'm
Let
not
them
even,
leave.
I will not, I will just also open, something, parenthèse, I don't know how you say it in English, about the fact that when you see the number of the death in Gaza, death rate is lowest in the Western warfare history. We don't talk about it. They keep saying that we are murdering children all the time. The titles on the BBC is like 15,000 children in Gaza are going to be dead by the end of the week if we don't bring enough food. This is all blatant lies and demonization of Israel, and we know and we are aware of it. But in reality, you should want to have the death toll, completely gone. With what? With having them as refugees. France, please take some Gazans. Countries take some, have the possibility. But no, because they are affiliated to UNRWA and not to UNHCR.
Right. Just to go on the INSS, they talk about the prohibition of starvation of civilians. They say that the laws of armed conflict prohibit the starvation of enemy civilians as a means of warfare. Okay, and they say it does not include denying electricity or fuel. If
Mhm.
you feed the people and give them water, you're done. You're totally done. Even for the people, they don't need to have. They don't, we are not required to make sure that they have electricity in their houses. And it points out that the prohibition on starvation does not apply to enemy fighters. They can be
Right.
denied food and water. They can be
This is a crucial
starved out.
point.
It is absolutely crucial. So we have no obligation under humanitarian law to feed Hamas.
Right.
And it's absurd to think we do.
Right,
Um,
right. I'll tell you even more. The plan, the plan of the IDF, which people say ethnic cleansing. No, it's not. We are allowed, according to the Geneva Convention, to do an effective siege over our enemy, right? What we
mhm.
do, Israel, we don't, first of all, we don't enforce the siege. If we would have, the war would have been done and gone and finished so long ago. But what we do and what we're supposed to do, what we intended, we still intend, I hope to do, is to do an effective siege by allowing the civilian population to leave to the safe zone. And then whoever stays in the north or in the area that we operate are considered Hamas. Once you have
That
the civilian, so we not only do we take all the precautions more than any other army in the world in the history of modern warfare, and we are still not given the credit or even the benefit of the doubt
mm,
because we are Jews and because it's Israel.
Also, when it comes to the obligation of Israel to allow the passage of humanitarian aid, Israel has no obligation to actively provide humanitarian aid to the civilian population in Gaza. Israel is only required to allow the passage of humanitarian aid. That
Right.
includes food, water, medicine, and medical equipment. And that's it. That's it.
Mhm.
It
No
is
fuel, by the way.
it is
No
it
fuel.
right. No fuel, no electricity, and it is absolutely permitted to demand that we are allowed to inspect and supervise that the aid is directed towards civilian population and does
Mhm.
not reach Hamas and is only things that the civilian population can use. So that
Again, the
also
books and the theory and the practice, two different things, unfortunately.
that's 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 unfortunately true. Is these are that it's I there when you see the debates between legal experts, and even if you read the proceedings of the International Court of Justice, they're ridiculous. There is no legal side. Israel is absolutely um, upholding all of its international legal obligations towards the Gazans. The
Mhm.
war is being fought entirely according to international laws. What's even crazier is I also Gaza. This is going to sound crazy, but it was called Gush Katif when Jews lived there until 2005. Their
Mhm.
major, their main source of income, their major occupation was agriculture.
Agriculture. Yeah,
They were exporting $80,000 a day of agriculture.
crazy.
I saw it in action. And
And
also,
when we left, what happened, Adam, when we left?
well, they couldn't do it anymore. But
Yeah, because they destroyed the plantations.
but it's so funny. They say before the war, they were saying Gaza is an open air prison. But now that there's the war, and of course it has been devastated, all
They show
these
how beautiful it was.
exactly how beautiful it was before the war.
Yeah.
It's not what we were hearing. It's really they
It's
feel
a
no
cynical game that they play, and unfortunately, they win. And that's the sad thing. They win because I guess we don't have the professional enough people in charge,
Rachel.
or talented enough. I don't know.
I which I kind of disagree with you on that. And I'll tell you why. How do I put this nicely? Um, you when it comes to blatant lies, you can only lie to people who want to be lied to. Okay? They want to believe the lie, even though the truth is sitting right in front of them. And
That's also
unfortunately, I
true.
think,
Yeah.
right. The International Court of Justice, I said it's really interesting. They convicted, they put out the arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu and Benny Gantz for, it's actually funny. What was their claim against Netanyahu? That when he said, we're fighting the war of Amalek,
Right.
they said, oh, you want to wipe out the nation. Meanwhile, he was talking about Hamas, but
Yeah.
I said, okay, so you're on the side of Amalek. Are you okay with that? You know? um,
Don't even know. They just did a translation, a literal translation of an expression in Hebrew that mean we're fighting the enemy.
I don't know. I feel like we're fighting Amalek. Amalek in
Oh,
the
we
Bible.
are. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, to our Israeli
But
minds, it's not common, knowledge that when he says Amalek, he's speaking about Hamas. Um,
at the same
yeah,
time, they did also put out an arrest warrant for a leader in Hamas who was already dead.
already dead. Yeah, it's Ania for Ania. Yeah,
Yeah, so the
correct.
International Court of Justice, these international organizations, you know, I guess
They're a
there's a lot.
scam. They're a scam.
There are. It was so funny. Thank God we just won the.
I can tell you again a personal story, but I'm sure that people will feel the same or will recognize themselves in this. As a kid, when you thought about the UN,
Right,
other organizations that I don't have in mind right now, humanitarian work, it was like wow on a pedestal, like the
right.
morality,
The
how
red,
beautiful.
The Red Cross.
The Red Cross, you guys don't even talk to me about it. But yeah, the Red Cross, when you thought about all these organizations, you felt that they are really the top of the top, la crème de la crème of the humankind. And in the end, what we discovered in Israel, not because of October 7, you already knew that before that, unfortunately, but it's become even more, blatant and clear to us.
Blatant. Yeah.
That in the end, these organizations are the most rotted, the most cynical, the most disgusting organizations that exist, and they enjoy this facade of how beautiful and how great and how moral we are, and they're just about money, influence, and demonization, and they're not talking about facts on the ground, especially when it's about Israel. I don't know how they function in regards to other conflicts, other situations on countries, but when it comes to Israel, the double standard.
In World War II, the Red Cross actually was in the Nazi POW camps and bringing food and
Nothing.
packages to
I saw the
to
report you
Allied
sent.
soldiers. But when it came to the concentration
We
camps and
have
the
seen no
Jews,
proof
no.
of. Yeah,
And Netanyahu has spoken to them about it, and they're like, "Oh, we can't go there. We can't bring anything to the hostages." It's
they
like,
did not even try.
right,
I think they really
right.
deserve their title of a Uber service, taxi service. That's what they are, a taxi service.
You know, this is all very discouraging, but there was a beautiful thing that happened a few days ago when Yuval Raphael came in
Yeah,
second place in the Eurovision, and I think it was the judges put her at 51st place. She was the judges were just, and these are the international judges, the people you have to
experts.
respect, the
Yeah,
expert, and the popular vote put her way, way up. That's why she won second
second place.
place.
Yeah,
So I'm thinking, this is all horrible. This is all difficult. But at the same time, I think that this belief that the majority of the world against us is an optical illusion because the majority of the world is with Israel. The majority of the people
yeah.
of the world are with Israel.
Unless you believe the president of Spain, who thinks
Right.
that we have,
Oh,
we have
Spain
paid the votes or whatever. Yeah, yeah. I
Spain
agree
has
with
such a wonderful history of treating Jews nicely.
exactly.
What
But
was it
expelling
that
us from the US, from the EBU,
they only repealed the expulsion of Jews from Spain?
the
Was it
Spanish, 1960,
yeah,
no,
1968, I think it was.
1600s. Yeah,
That's what, no, it started in 1492, but
1492.
Jews were not officially let back in until 1968. That's kind of embarrassing,
Wow,
But
embarrassing to them.
that's the governments. When it comes to the people, I
But
think
I
we're not
think
fooling
to
anyone.
jump back to what you said, I honestly, it's true. It felt good to receive some, let's say, virtual hug, if we can say it like this. It did
Yes.
feel good. It was unexpected. Um, but does it mean something when in the end the politicians are the same politicians? Um,
So,
the results, I mean, according to what we're seeing with the vote of the Eurovision, you would not expect Macron to say, oh, we're going to pursue and declare that we recognize the Palestinian state in a month, um, and yet in the end you have a lot of politics and leftists and pro-Muslim votes that have a definite influence over the politics in Europe, at least. Yeah.
so I don't know if you're familiar or that familiar with my articles, but I publish news. I write articles, and as much as I can, and depending on how much coffee I have,
Mhm.
I write it from a biblical prophetic perspective. And when you write about prophecy, there's no question what's going to happen. Anyone who's read the Bible knows how this is all going to end. We've seen it before, and I think that's why Netanyahu and Gantz and many others in the government are talking in biblical terms, because this is biblical. This could come right out of the Tanakh, out of the Bible. This conflict and our success in the war up until now is also biblical.
Right.
So the thing about prophecy is you know what's going to happen. The only question is, where do
How
you
do you get there?
stand? Well, no, because even when it happens, a lot of people don't recognize. It's very rare that people can say, "Oh, that's." You have to recognize it. The question for the individual is, where do you stand? Where did you stand when it happened?
Hmm.
And I'm seeing a lot of that right now. And you see the rulers are like not so great. But I think more and more everyone's becoming polarized. You have people standing with Israel, but you also have, pardon me, you also have people who are taking the most uh, ridiculous positions. There was a book called The Wave, which was all about a high school class learning about the Holocaust. And how the kids were like, "Oh, that's silly. Who were these Nazi people? They were the," and the teacher was like, "No, you could have done it." And even Jordan Peterson, he did a class where he says, "Okay, raise your hand. How many of you think that you would have stood with the Jews in the Holocaust?" And no one raised their hand. And Jordan Peterson said, "You're all lying. If you had been there, and everyone here would have been a Nazi." It was the most popular
Wow.
party.
I
And
missed that video.
oh my gosh, it was an old video and he was still teaching university classes. And unfortunately, we're seeing it in real time.
Yeah.
And people are not going to be able to hide. You know, your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed, your TikToks, these these people are out in the streets and they're actually wearing more of a uniform than Hamas is.
Right. Right.
They're wearing a silly keffiyeh.
And I think the element of shame is a very, that's the key word here. They lost the shame of being anti-Semitic, the shame of, showing off the Jew hatred in front of a camera on Instagram. Maybe it's one of the results of social media as well. I don't
Oh,
know.
I don't,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know.
This is not my area of expertise, unfortunately.
I don't know. When I grew up in America, I came here when I was 30 years old in 1991. You can do the math.
Hmm.
And we always kind of knew that in many ways Germany was like America, or America was like Germany. So far as the education, the academics, being the main culture of the Enlightenment. Um, and we always kind of we would say, though I didn't really believe it, that the next Holocaust would be in America. And
Really?
what, yeah, but we didn't really believe it. But now what I'm seeing, I just was totally unprepared for, even though I was saying it back then. I'm totally unprepared for what I'm seeing. The fact that you can stand up in Congress and say, "Oh, Israel should not get weapons," you know, or a university professor sitting in front of Congress saying, "No, a call for a
It
Holocaust,"
depends on
and
the context.
right, it depends on the context. I'm just like,
Yeah.
how did we get there? How did we get
Well,
there?
I think Qatar would be a nice start to a point of research.
You know something? I don't know. I'm still Donald Trump. I have a lot of faith in the man. At the end of the day, he's got to go back home to his Jewish grandchildren. We have a
Yeah.
joke. What's the difference between Donald Trump and a liberal left wing American Jew? Donald Trump has Jewish grandchildren.
Ah,
Jew, secular liberal Jews tend
touché.
to not have Jewish
True.
grandchildren.
Yeah, it's true.
I think he's playing 3D chess. I think
The
he's
unexpected. The world needs
right.
something like this, but it's scary because you,
It
you
is
don't know how
scary,
to.
but he is a smart guy. It's just world politics right now is terrifying. It got so bad over the last 4 years.
Mm.
I think
Thank you,
he's,
Biden. Yeah.
thank you, Biden. I mean, Biden didn't want Israel to go into Rafah, and he knew that the Hamas leaders were
Right.
there, that the
Well,
hostages were there. He knew, and he said, "No, no, don't go in," because he didn't want us to win. He didn't want it to end. I'm waiting for
Biden was the one who put the sanctions on the people of my movement,
right, really. Oh,
and
right,
very,
right, right, right,
very
right,
aggressive sanctions,
right. That's why
very
I wrote about it.
undemocratic
That's
sanctions. You had no way to appeal them because they were not US citizens. But suddenly, from one day to the other, the bank accounts of the people under sanctions were frozen. And we're talking about families, about
You're
people
right.
who
Now that you mention
we're,
it.
we are like people are law-abiding people who just protest against this basic truth that you should not send help to the enemy. And they were, yeah, like I said, the sanctions, the economical sanctions that OFAC put on them from a direct order of the presidential, decree. It was immediately effective with no way to appeal, with no way of going to the courts. No lawyer wanted to take the cases. Um, it was very, very aggressive. And to think that it came from the allegedly, the most democratic country, from the representative leader of the free world, and towards, an ally, Israel. It was very, very, very bad. And one of the first things that Trump did when he came to office was to cancel this. And there was a
Yes.
thought, yeah, and there was
Yes.
a thought to begin with. People from the right in Israel wanted to say, okay, the left used that tool against us. Let's put sanctions on them now. And smart people in Israel told them, don't do that, because this is you should not touch these kind of, all power, almighty tools, because it's aggressive on the one hand and it will come back to you as a boomerang. And I think the right here, the Republican part, I might say, to compare it to Israel, to the US, is smarter in that aspect, is more like morally centered to say, okay, this is wrong, we cannot use that tool. The left, on the other side, would not hesitate to sell the mother, the father, the children in order to get what they want to do. One example of that is Yair Golan's statement of yesterday.
Oh my
Exactly
gosh.
the same.
Oh, could you? I didn't quite get enough of a dive into that. So what did?
Well, Yair Golan he wants to be the leader of the left in Israel, the opposition, and he's willing to go to. There's no limit to the length he's willing to go, and he's proven this yesterday when on the radio yesterday morning he said that the IDF, as a hobby, kills children in Gaza. Um, and it comes from a general in the army, a former general, one of the person who allegedly, at least that's what he says, that on October 7th he went there and he saved people and he put his ranks on to do that. And coming from him, it was immediately brought up to the press and international media and demonizing Israel. I mean, we have enough haters in the world that we have now a left politician who's willing to just to grab the attention of maybe for his own interest to stop the war, is willing to just throw such a deep shade on the IDF, which is the organization who brought him up. I mean, he's been spending his career in the IDF. It's very, very bad. And what he said, it's not just a blatant lie, which, by the way, soldiers on the ground who are right now, like I told you at the beginning of this interview, it's our families, it's our husbands, fathers, children, brothers, cousins, etc., etc. They are fighting the fight to save us, to protect us, including that guy. They are there to protect us. They're not there to kill children. And they actually posted online, soldiers anonymously, of course. They published a drawing that they did on one of the walls of a Gaza building. They posted a picture, like they draw a picture of people playing football, like a goal, a goal thing of the football. And they said we have other hobbies than that. Um, and it's sad because when you think about it, and I know it's not the subject of our interview, but when you
No, but
think about the fight that we are dealing with, the fight online, on the social media, on the public arena, when you have this kind of cynical politician who decides to say what he says for his own benefit, and he's not even taking it back. He knows it's not true.
and one person like that does more damage than
Oh
thousands
yeah.
of people sitting
One
there
one
telling the
Yair
truth.
Golan, one Olmert or Boogie Alon. Like who needs anti-Semites when you have them?
Or one article in the Haaretz, it's
Yeah, true, same. It's the same. Those are anti-Zionist people, post-Zionist people, and it's what I call the suicidal left. This is my own personal suicidal left. It's not a left who wants to
suicidal. Suicidal.
suicidal.
Yes.
Yeah, excuse my French.
Okay. No.
Suicidal left. It means what it means. In order to get what they want to do, if they can't, they'll burn the house with them.
It's funny because I know that it also exists in America, in the US.
Oh, it exists
Um,
everywhere. in
It does
France too.
exist everywhere. I can't figure that out.
In the Western world, it exists. It's a phenomenon, but it exists.
I mean, I guess it's a form of nihilism, but it's just, I mean, it says in the Torah, it says, choose life, choose life. Really simple. And so many people, that's the last thing they'll ever do. And I think that's what we're saying. I mean, Israel, God bless the IDF.
Yeah,
These are men who have left their families, even women who have left their families for almost 2 years.
right.
And it's some of them have been in the whole time. Many of them have been in the whole time. When they called, they had
They leave
about
everything.
125% of the guys who were called showed up.
Yeah.
Um, that's people have to understand this is a volunteer army. This is not, or actually, it's a volunteer and they have a draft. But
This
after,
is the proof of our resilience, the Jewish people, the Israelis, the resilience.
uh,
Uh, you don't have a parallel to this anywhere in the world, I believe. Honestly, the resilience that we have proven.
especially not now, especially
Yeah,
not now.
we're not in a, like we said earlier, we're not living in an era of war resilience, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
Israel shows resilience, I think, in a way that nobody expected us to. Especially before October 7, with all the political
I've
rift in the society.
yeah, we're being a light unto the nations. We're changing the world. It used to be that the world, when it was faced with Islamic extremists, they would be, oh no, we have to allow Iran to have a nuclear
Yeah,
weapon. We have to allow them. Oh,
let's talk about it. Let's
yeah,
have ideas in conferences. Yeah.
and now people are like, oh, let's send them a bunch of beepers. We taught
Yeah.
them, and they're getting it. And it's crazy because we're such a small country,
And they still complain
and they still complain, and they
because
still
why
complain.
not? Mm.
So Rachel, I really can't thank you enough.
Thank you. It's a
If
pleasure.
something else happens, if you
Well,
manage, if
unfortunately, it's important for me to pass one message before we end.
oh please,
Uh, we decided to go back to block and protest. Um, I insist this is our democratic right as citizens who care about what's going on, who care about the lack of strategy that our right now government decided upon. Um, and it's important to say that the problem, what we want to achieve in Tzav 9 is not to block aid in general and to starve people. It's to really make and have people question and understand that the way you distribute that aid and who takes that aid is really important. And you cannot neglect that or say, oh, it's fine. 70% of humanitarian aid falling into the hands of the enemy, leaving maybe only 30% reaching the population is not fine. It's
this
not
could
a lesser evil.
this could be the major cause of Israel not winning the war.
Exactly.
This one thing.
Exactly. And I repeat once again what I said. Who controls the aid controls Gaza. I don't
Mhm.
mind being the one who people say you control Gaza, you control Gaza, you're an occupier. Let us occupy Gaza really, and you'll see that Hamas will be gone. And then we'll be able to think about the day after. But allow us to get to the day after. And speaking about slogans, oh, we should do this, we should do that. Well, on the ground, the reality is not how it's written in books or in articles. The reality is tough. War is bad, yes, but war is inevitable when you face a terror organization. Don't
Mhm.
feed the terror organization.
I,
And
I
also don't believe the lies. Don't believe the
right.
lies of terror organizations.
I will
Why?
say that early on in the war, when Savtasha started working, there was an awful lot of anger and hatred towards what
Yeah.
you were doing. People
Well,
were
they
saying,
called us the
"Oh,
extremists. But
yeah,"
what they don't understand, yeah, but what they don't understand is that Sab 9 is apolitical. We have left people, center people, right people, secular, religious, bereaved families, hostage families members. We represent the Israeli society. So either the entire society is extremist, and then you would not see left parties in Israel anymore. So there's a problem in in this logic. Or you should admit that this is a crucial point for the Israeli people. This is crucial. Humanitarian aid and how it's distributed determines how this war ends. It's
I've
crucial.
noticed. I've noticed that in this recent round of humanitarian aid that Tzav 9 is doing really very active and amazing work. I mean, these are people, you leave your house and you go out and you stand in front of the trucks and you
Yeah.
say no.
And
And
yeah,
this time around, there seems to be a lot more acceptance of what you people are doing because what you're
depends
saying,
who you ask.
I'm sorry?
It depends who you ask. The
That's
international media
maybe
loves to depict us as
right,
extremists and
right,
violent.
right.
And
But
as
I
a
think
result of that, we received those sanctions from Biden.
right. But I have on social media, most of my friends are either evangelicals or Israelis, and even the evangelicals and Israelis who might not have been so accepting of Tzav 9 before, it's I mean it's clear they're understanding that this is bad for Israel, it's bad for the Gazans,
It's bad
it's
for the
just
Gazans.
making the war drag on and drag on and
Right.
drag on. It's giving more and more
It's a
power
lose-lose
to Hamas.
situation.
Right.
And
And
it's a consensus in Israel that this is bad.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is why the decision that the government took 2 days ago to start again those trucks initiated so much, protest, so much. You don't understand. It was by the way one of the red lines of Smotrich. He said, if one thing goes into Gaza, I quit the government. And then when they actually took that decision, he said, oh, that's fine. We'll have drones too, as if the IDF would ever decide on firing at a truck because there's Hamas in it. We will not fire at a humanitarian truck. The backlash that we would get from this is definitely something that we would not do.
Yeah.
So they lie to us all the time, and in the people of Tzav 9 who follow this from closely, trust me, very closely, we are sick of it, and we are tired of being treated as fools.
Mm.
So we protest, we go there without, pacifically, like we do not use violence. On the contrary, when we go there and we are confronting the soldiers or the police officers, we tell them with smiles, we're here for you. And they know, and each one of us, them and us, each one of us have a role to play, a role to do. This is our role to protest, and the role of them is to stop us. But
Mm.
it's a sad game that we do, and when they arrest us. And by the way, the leader of Tzav 9, Reut Ben Chaim, has been arrested today. She went and protested. She's a mother of 8. She's not the typical terrorist that you should arrest. But she got arrested, and she told to the officer, Baruch, why are you doing this? You know that I'm here for you. And the guy he says, yeah, come with me. Stop, come with me. Like no one does that from a happily. We have other things to do in our lives than to go to Kerem Shalom, which is the farther point in Israel. And to do that, but when we have to we do it, and I call it my milui, my reservist duty, and
Well,
that's how we consider it.
God bless you. It's really it's so essential, and it's saying this is good and this is evil. Too often people
Exactly.
get the two confused. Anyway, Rachel, I want you to send me all the links how people can follow you, stay in touch with
Sure.
you.
We
It's
have
important.
WhatsApp groups. We were banned
Oh,
from social
amazing.
media, but we have Twitter.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, we were. Our pages are blocked on Facebook and
I didn't know you guys were that amazing. I don't know.
well, according to Biden, we were. Let's see if we are
Oh
again.
my gosh. Oh my
Right. But we
gosh.
have
Yeah,
Twitter, we have WhatsApp groups,
that's
very
that
active on WhatsApp.
that's a
This is how
person
we
who
organize ourselves,
that's a
logistics.
person who definitely couldn't tell the difference between good and evil.
We almost lost our email account, just so you know. Google almost dropped us too.
Okay. So send me
Right.
all the links of how people can
I will.
still keep
I
in
will.
touch with you.
Thank you so much,
And for
Adam.
people that want to help. Rachel, I really can't thank you much. So
Thank
so
you.
much. Be blessed. Be blessed.